Hello, everyone, and welcome to TechWhirl's Fast Five. My name's Al Martine, and today we're talking about the mobile user experience, a complex thing that is constantly changing. So we thought maybe we ought to bring in an expert to help us walk through it, and we found one. He's going to be speaking at LavaCon. He is the Senior Vice President for Innodata, Stephen Ryden-Lloyd. Stephen, welcome to the show.
Good morning.
So the process we go through here with the TechWhirl Fast Fives, we're going to ask you 5 big questions, and these aren't gotchas. These are going to be talking about the industry and being able to help us and help the folks who are watching better understand this process. Now, if you are coming to us via London, and recently the Olympics and Paralympics finished up there. Did you flee the city, or did you stay and maybe get to go to some of the events?
Al, I was very fortunate that I got to see hockey and the men's gymnastics at the Olympics, which was just awesome. It was a great time to be there. It was one of those. London is a bit like walking down 6th Avenue in New York. Everybody heads down to the pavement. Nobody speaks to each other. There's no civility in the city usually. But during the Olympics, it was just one of those moments when everybody smiled and said good morning to each other, and the atmosphere was fantastic. And people, just about everybody, got behind the event, wholeheartedly. It was like getting tickets to the Olympics was like finding hen's teeth. There was so many things were sold out. There were days when I was checking online every morning, looking for, could I get the last-minute slot in, canoe slalom, which is something I've ever seen before. But you just couldn't pick it for anything after it started. But it was fantastic.
Well, good. So, as an expert in the mobile user experience and whatnot, did you see any apps or any really good examples roll out during the Olympics?
The one thing that I used, and it's kind of like a little bit, perhaps generic, but the one thing that I thought was fantastic was the BBC app. On the BBC app, you could get high-quality video streaming of every event, every single minute of the day. So I'd sit here at my desk, and I'd be trying to work on my computer, and propped up next to it would my iPad with the BBC app open, and I'd be flicking between sports that I'd never shown any interest in whatsoever before, learning the intricacies of, like women's gymnastics scoring or something like that. So that was an excellent one. The ubiquity of the coverage is something that I don't think we've ever seen before, and I think NBC did something similar in the States, where you had instant access to every sport every second of the day, which is something very, very new, and the quality is just leaps and bounds ahead of where it was even 4 years ago. So that was fantastic, just that to have the ability to see things that you wanted to look at. It's very distracting, I have to say, at the same time. While you're trying to work, there's a competitor in a medal-winning position somewhere, your kind of attention gets turned very quickly to watching something you shouldn't be doing. But it was once in a lifetime for the UK.
Very true. We were there. We were still living there when the bid was announced and the acceptance was, and I remember it being a mixed bag. People were really thrilled that they'd beat Paris and being able to win the bid, but at the same time everyone go, whoa, wait a minute, this is going to be a pretty big undertaking, but it looks like it all turned out very well.
I think it did. The weeks before the Olympics, there were 3 major disaster stories. The first is the traffic, the second was security, and the third was, would it be sold out? And in the event, the traffic managed to survive the event. Security worked without a problem, and touch wood and all of the rest of it for that. And in the event, the tickets were sold out as well. So, typical media cynicism, I find. Before the event, it was all going to be a disaster. And then as soon as it started, it became a great success.
Agreed. Okay, so we've talked about the BBC app, and let's leave NBC's coverage out of this for a little while. We're a family program here, and there's no need to really express in no uncertain terms how bad their coverage was. Did you run across or see any really bad implementations of mobile apps or things that companies tried that just was a giant fail?
I actually no, I didn't. I restricted my usage to a small number of apps, and I didn't look outside of that, just because there was so much content to witness. So, you didn't have time to spread your wings very widely. I'm sure there were some. I'm sure if you were in Uzbekistan, the apps there wouldn't have been as good as they might have been here. But generally, the ones I looked at were very good.
Oh, good. Excellent. All right, well, let's go ahead and get started. As I mentioned before, these are 5 big questions on the mobile experience and where this thing is heading. We're also going to be fielding any questions from Twitter. It's the hashtag TWFast and the numeral 5. We even have our fancy display. So if anybody's following along, they want to send a question to Stephen or us, please put that into Twitter, or it's on my other screen here, so I'll be checking it. And we'll be certain to add those in. And finally, we'll ask any questions and follow-ups. And helping me answer those questions is the editor of TechWriter Today magazine, our news site, and our benevolent dictator on our email discussion group. Connie, welcome.
Thanks. I'm glad to be here.
And I'm glad I added you in there, as my script kind of got thrown out as I wasn't paying attention. So you follow the email discussion groups and various things on the web. For mobile experience, what are some of the big questions that have come up since you've been either editing this or just over the years?
For the most part, the questions on mobile experience seem to focus around the techniques that people are, and tools that people are going to need to be using in order to do the multi-display type of publishing, where obviously there are about 5,000 different flavors of Android and nearly as many resolution screens, display sizes for laptops and tablets and whatnot. So a lot of the questions that we see right now are focused on where do I start with trying to build out these experiences for different devices. What are some of the gotchas in thinking about it? How hard is HTML5 to learn? Those sorts of things as people are starting to really get revved up for trying to develop the content that they're responsible for, so that it can be accessed anywhere, anytime.
Gotcha. All right. Good questions, and so we'll see if we can dive into those with the Fast 5. If not, we'll double back at the end. So, shall we jump into these now?
I'm ready.
Stephen, you ready?
Absolutely.
The Olympic events for questions.
That's right.
All right, Connie, you got the first question?
I sure do. Stephen, what do you view as the catalysts for the increase that you're seeing in companies extending and focusing their strategies on the mobile experience versus more traditional desktop computer type experiences?
There's a number, I think, aren't there? And I'll pick a few. I'll pick the first 5, and I'm sure that we can identify a bunch of other things. But in terms of catalysts, I think one of the main catalysts is just simply the uptake on consumption of tablet and mobile devices. If we look at some of the statistics, it's an incredible market that's been developed very, very quickly since the beginning of 2010 to now, since the first tablets came out. Sales this year are forecast to reach about 120 million tablet devices and hundreds of millions of mobile devices. Apple alone is taking up 80 or more % now of that tablet market. So the first thing is take up, and it's particularly prevalent in professionals up to the age of 49. Surveys show that young professionals and professionals up to the age of 49 are the primary group for tablet and mobile content consumption. And at the same time, actually, we're seeing a decline in the number of dedicated e-readers. Sales of dedicated e-readers are forecast to drop this year from last year, while tablet sales are forging ahead. So people really want that sort of multimedia-rich, multifunction experience, and where it aids them doing their job, it's particularly strong. So I'll talk a little bit about that, more about that in a moment. I think the second one is accessibility and portability. And I think I remember when I got my first Apple laptop, it was the most fantastic thing. I can remember sitting on an aeroplane watching a DVD and being surrounded by people who were amazed. But then we consider that in a tablet environment, and the portability of tablets is just amazing. They can go in places that PCs and laptops could never go before. The advent of cloud-based content serving services is just simply aiding that. And as well as that, the ability to consume content, to read, to learn, to be entertained offline as well as online is one of the key aspects to them. I think the third area is the user experience itself. It's become much richer. The ability to mingle multimedia as well as text-based content, and mingle that with user-generated content, connect that to social networks, is really, really powerful, and it can make for much more valuable learning and content consumption, as well as the ability to find people who are interested in the things that you're interested in. So that's the fourth one, I think, is the social aspect to it. We're seeing a lot of people contributing their own content to websites, to YouTube, to other things, connecting using Facebook, Twitter, and other social media sites. Finding people in their location who have got similar interests or similar questions to themselves, and asking them or connecting them with professionally curated content is something we're seeing a big rise of. And I think the fifth area actually is data. One of the things that the mobile experience allows a company to do is to gather data about how people are consuming their content and to learn from that. To learn from that in two ways. One is to promote related content to them, which may be a sale or maybe to enhance their professional experience. The other is increasingly something that we're seeing is to change pricing based upon consumption or market, so that you can increase revenue, increase reach across different places. So data and analytics are becoming a big part of that, and the mobile experience allows companies in particular to gather that data, to analyze it, and to use it to develop their products and services further. So I think those are some of the key catalysts as I see it.
All right. Well, thank you for that. And that, yeah, it's a growing trend, and it's one that companies avoid at their peril. So we know, and just judging by the amount of times I get hit with, you know, do you want to download our app, or we're hearing lectures or conversations on different design approaches. I have to imagine there's a lot of companies who aren't leading the way, but know they need to go in this direction. For you, what are the key steps determining that path that they should take to decide on an effective mobile strategy?
So we as a company have worked in many places helping people to start the path of developing a mobile strategy as well as to implement that. And then those implementation steps take many forms in terms of changing business processes, thinking about and conceiving content development in different ways, as well as implementing the technology that is necessary to distribute and deliver content to people. But from that experience, we've developed what we call a defined approach to mobile and tablet strategies. And that defined approach is a collection of methodologies that is really aimed at helping people avoid common minefields along the way. And if I just describe those briefly, there's 6 methodologies that come with this defined approach. And as you say, you know, there's a lot of complexity out there, and there's a lot of channel complexity, and there's a lot to understand. So we're really trying to aim to cut through that and get to a starting point. The first of these is a methodology to think about device and channel prioritization. As Connie said a moment ago, Android may be a standard, maybe an operating system standard, but its implementation comes in many different flavors. iOS is a little, much more consistent and locked down, but there's also BlackBerry. There is also Windows Mobile, Windows 8 that is coming out this year. So there's a lot of channel and device complexity. So we have a methodology where we help people select and prioritize which of those channels and devices to work with first, but also in a way that allows extensibility to go to other places. In a moment, I'm going to talk a little bit about a case study of one of our customers who navigated this particular minefield. The next is to think about mobility development strategy. We talked a little bit about Android, iOS, BlackBerry, Windows, and so forth. Is it feasible to approach all of those operating systems in parallel, or do you start with one and move on to the other? So we have a methodology that helps people make those decisions, and there are some, maybe some straightforward answers there. If you're thinking about developing a tablet experience, well, there's a bear in the woods there. But do you want to put all of your eggs in that particular basket, or do you want to try and do that in a smart way so that you can start in one place and move on to the next? You introduce something at the start, which is a content standard called HTML5, and that's a good way of helping to work through that particular minefield, developing content in that standard, but releasing it in one environment, one channel first, but being able to then release that content in other channels because you've got the content part of the problem solved. The third area that we help people with is what we call rethinking workflow. Early adopters of tablet and mobile experiences, and Condé Nast is a company that is a good example of this, develops fantastic. If anyone downloaded the Wired magazine app when it was first released, you'll remember it was a completely different experience to reading a magazine. But I talked with some of the folk at Condé Nast at a conference a couple of years ago, and the way that they developed their workflow was to bolt on app development after the legacy publishing process, and it's simply unsustainable when you grow to to volume scale. So we have to think about how we upstream the development of content so that it's appropriate for downstream consumption through multiple channels, including tablet and mobiles. And so we help people to work through that minefield. If you're selling content, then it helps also to have what we call a content monetization plan. There's no point, obviously, in trying to sell low-value, low-usage content first. You really want to try and be successful and to use that success to leverage other activities. And related to that, we help to think about the content portfolio and what is most suitably and what can be most suitably be developed for mobile and tablet. Well, one of the things that people have found, the minefield in this area, is that simply replicating a print experience is dissatisfying to customers. Taking a PDF and putting it onto a mobile device or a tablet device, gets you one notch up the ladder, but it's not a very engaging experience for people. So we have to think about how we engage people through user interaction design, through the features that are available to enhance and text and other content-based products. Excuse me. And then the last methodology in this defined approach is about the technology itself. We have a very agnostic technological approach, but what we do have is what we call a technology blueprinting methodology, where we help take people through the steps to select the right tools for the job. So in terms of what we can do and what we've developed through our experiences, we've developed these methodologies. We call it a defined approach to tablet and mobile. It's focused on helping people avoid the minefields and complexities, and to really drive a clear channel to developing strategy and implementing that.
Interesting. And this is probably somewhat related to to these strategies, particularly in terms of the content portfolio and the technology strategies. And how are you all seeing that companies are accounting for the various range of devices, like you mentioned, Android, Apple, BlackBerry, laptops, you name it. How are they accounting for all of these different displays and platforms in the development strategy itself for the content, in terms of whether it's an app or whether it's some sort of HTML-based content?
Let me try and answer that and tell a story. A story that I'll try and keep anonymous, the client of ours that we worked with here. But we over the last year and a half, we've worked with a large professional publishing business on the development of their mobile and tablet content distribution. When they first came to us, they had apps. They had Apple apps, traditional apps. Download from the App Store, open them up, buy a book or some other content through the app. You transact it in the way that Apple requires you to. they wanted to break out of that. They wanted to break out of that for two reasons. First is the revenue model that goes with working with Apple and Amazon and people like that. But secondly, and more importantly to them, is back to the analytics that I mentioned. They really wanted to understand what their customers were doing, what they were reading, how long they were spending with information. They wanted to use that to drive further sales or to develop their content in ways that was more valuable for their customers. So they came to us, and their plan initially was to develop content BlackBerry, the BlackBerry Playbook. But of course, BlackBerry Playbook has not been as successful as BlackBerry would like it to be. Let's just leave that there. But actually, for this particular customer, their customer base, their end customer base, actually had a higher proportion of BlackBerry users than in the wider population. So it was a relevant starting point for them. But anyway, we ditched the BlackBerry idea, and then we moved on to thinking about Android. Well, as you said, Connie, a moment ago, Android is really complicated. Yes, there's something you can work with, but when you're developing content, just about every Android-based device has got a different nuance to it. It's got a different way of working in some particular aspect. And that became very complex and very costly for us to think about how we would develop content and a technology platform to deliver that. But in a parallel to this, while we were trying to work through this sort of complexity of which device to prioritize and which operating system to work with, one thing we did agree on was that the content itself was going to be stored in HTML5 format. And there's a number of benefits of that. I think we'll come on to that in a moment. But one of the key benefits for this particular client is that while we were trying to work through this minefield of which device and which operating system to work with, it didn't really matter from the content perspective, because once we decided to store content in HTML5, we could pretty much render it on any of those devices. And actually, the way this discussion went around in circles, and we ended up developing a content-based app for iOS, so an Apple app that displayed content in HTML5 format inside it. And in parallel to that, we helped them develop an online version of that, a web browser-based version. And to bring this story around even further, we're now in the process of helping them develop Android-based apps. But the key consideration there is that by taking that decision to store content in HTML5 format, it enabled us to focus our priorities on each of those channels, because they have the ability to support that content. So there's, when you think about, accounting for that complexity, people go through journeys, if you like, of trying to work out which is the best way. Another way to focus attention in terms of the accounting for the wide range of devices is just to look at the numbers. If you think your content is more suited to a tablet-based experience than a mobile-based experience, which we may all have opinions on what kind of content suits both, and everybody's got a personal viewpoint on which device works better for them. But if you're thinking about tablets, then as I said, there's a bear in the wood. There really is only one place to start at the moment. But if you're smart and you take that, you think strategically about how you manage content, then it doesn't matter if you start with Apple apps or iOS. You can then move yourself into different channels along the way. So we see, from that accounting side, there is a lot of complexity, but people are tending to start in one place and move to others, but based on smart decisions about how to store content.
Good deal. Yeah, and agreed. You had mentioned that the HTML5 and how you were moving there. How is the introduction and what is becoming a rapid adoption of this standard, how is this changing how companies are approaching these applications and their content?
Right. And the first thing I'd say there is it's just that I think there are many benefits of HTML5, and some of those that we've worked with, I'll just list out a few. I mentioned a moment ago the ability to render content with a level of consistency in multiple devices. One of the things that we have found working with our clients is that that's very important for professionals. Professionals might want to read something on their tablet. They then may go to the office and read the same content on their computer at work, and they want the look and feel of that to be consistent. There are one of our clients joked with us a while back that that lawyers are not the most intuitive people in the world, and if you confuse them with different user experiences, it slows down their work. They really want it to look and feel the same. So HTML5 is great for that from a content rendering perspective. We've built systems, we've maintained systems for people that build on HTML5 support for user-generated content, things like highlighting and bookmarking. Something that professionals find very useful if you're dipping into content, you want to bookmark something and then go back to it later. So one of the great things about HTML5 is, going back to that, are we looking at something on a tablet or a mobile device or a web screen, is that you can keep that, if you create a bookmark in one place, you can view it in another. You can keep that link between the bookmark and the content across different devices, which is great. It has support for rich media, which is becoming increasingly important. You can store content offline securely. We even worked with one client who has developed DRM within the Chrome browser around HTML5 content. You can read on a laptop offline with rights management around it. I'm not going to get into the field of rights management because that's, there's an ongoing and an important debate about that. It can also support granular content uploading. So when something changes within a large piece of content set, when you get back online after being offline, you only need to download what has been updated, which is something that makes things very, very quick. So we like HTML5 as a content rendering format. I think if you have HTML5 for text and you have SVG for images, then really you're in a very strong place, because one of the things that we find increasingly important at the moment, particularly for technical content or very precise content, or even things like formulae, for clients that we work with where that's important. SVG is a great format for rendering images, which fits across the resolutions of many different devices. So something to work on at the moment. So yes, we are seeing the widespread adoption of HTML5. We're seeing a migration of people who've started in the world of developing native apps for different devices who are new to HTML5, and there's some good examples of that that people can go online and search for references of. The Financial Times is one good example. Thomson Reuters is another company that is moving from native app to HTML5 content. So absolutely, it is changing the way we do things. It's changing the way we do things from a technological perspective, but also from a user perspective, in the fact that it supports some more advanced features and the portability of those features. And I think it will only grow. The threat to it, perhaps, is what happens with the E3 standard coming down the road whenever it is released. If it lives up to expectations or hype, then that may offer a different content development path. But at the moment, to me, HTML5 is a very good way to think about going.
So we'll take a TechWhirl Fast 5 question here, and actually it touches on HTML5 and apps. And I'm not going to read the whole thing. It's the Tech Writer Curmudgeon or something like this, but it's the name of the person. But I'm not going to read the whole thing because we are a family program. But they're not thrilled at getting the download their app pop-up when all they were doing was just clicking on a link and wanting to read an article. And they seem to imply that this is hurting the user experience. Do you think that this is going to be a period of time in sort of the evolution of the web, in which there was a point where everybody went to apps because the web wasn't ready? Do you think we're moving away from apps in the long run?
I think that I think it depends on what you're doing. I think if it's if you say you're becoming accredited on a piece of computer hardware and you're taking a learning course that's provided by a manufacturer, we see a trend away from apps toward HTML5 in doing that. Yes, it has some annoyances, like the fact that you can put ads in there, you can put pop-ups, you can do all sorts of different things. But that's really about the owner of the content, the publisher, or the the writer, or the people producing it, and what they want to do and how they want to engage with consumers of that. So yes, it can be annoying, but that's a dialogue between users and companies about what's the best experience for them, and I think people will learn from that. I've stopped there for a moment.
All right, Connie, do you want to ask your next question?
Sure. I'm curious. One of the things that I've seen a lot of discussion on, not necessarily in a TechCom perspective, but it does greatly impact TechCom, and that's how does a company's current technology, whatever they're doing, if they're a Microsoft, a Windows environment, if they're an iOS environment, whatever their particular circumstances are as far as how they've adopted a technology approach, how does that impact how they develop their mobile device strategy in terms of where they start, or what kinds of things they have to look at in developing that mobile strategy?
I'll start by answering that with the contrast. As a company, we work with a broad set of clients. We work with enterprises who develop content as a support to products, and we work with publishing and information media businesses where content is what they sell to their customers. That's the revenue generation of it. And there's always been, to me, an odd contrast between those two groups of people. They're very, very broadly at that level. Publishing businesses have been very slow to adopt XML-centric content development processes, yet perhaps have been some the people who stand to gain the most from doing so. Now, there are lots of examples of people who have done it, but equally there are a lot of examples of people who haven't done that. And if you think about, I won't name any names, but the most successful publishing businesses selling ebooks are some of the most backward in terms of their XML content production processes. And then you contrast that with a lot of enterprises who have implemented XML-based content production processes, topically based XML content production processes, who have the Tridians, I can't remember all of the technologies, have just gone out of my head, but have got XML content management systems in place, and they've done it for technical content or for learning content. That, to me, is a great platform to build on. If you've got your content topically indexed in an XML managed way, you're really half of the way there, because those transformations to content that is going to be displayed on mobile and tablet devices are really transformations. They're not conversions. It's a more straightforward step to go from HTML5 to from XML to HTML5 and so forth than it is to go from an unstructured Word document into a structured XML form that you need to render in mobile. So that, to me, is a great way to start. If you've got that in place, you're really halfway there. Then it's really about thinking how you take that content and you put it in a way, you can store it in a way that can be distributed. So we increasingly see people developing platforms for distribution outside of the platforms for development, for content development. And again, they're XML-centric or HTML5 formatted. So those, the common thing is to have the back end, have the platform to deliver it, and then the other tools that are necessary depend upon really what you're doing. Let me use a couple of examples. We're aware, and we've worked with one company that put its learning content in a wiki platform, for them, it's that the technology was to develop a wiki-based technology and a business process around managing user content alongside their own content. So it was a wiki that had tools to tag and index and index to taxonomic terms in those cases. Relatively straightforward environment. But if you're in the world of selling learning content, selling coursework, then other technologies come into play, like learning management systems, potentially DRM protection around content, as well as the content distribution, as well as the app development that goes with it. So really what you need and what the gap between what you have already is really largely dependent upon what kind of business you're engaged in. If you're selling, distributing, making available, and how you want to make that available. Do you want it to be freely available, or do you want to control that, and do you want to analyze the way people are using it? And then you get into things like business intelligence applications to provide reporting and so forth. One of the ways that we start, and I suppose it's not so much about whether you're Apple or you're Microsoft or all the rest of it. To me, it's about having content in XML format. But often the way that we work with our clients is really to look at what's reusable, what's in place and what's reusable before trying to build out programs of expensive technology implementation to bridge those gaps. Often some of the tools are in place and you have to find a way of knitting them together. Connie, does that help answer your question?
Yeah, I think so, because I think people often need to have a starting place, and we tend to forget that a lot of it depends on exactly what your business is trying to do. So and because it does make a difference in the kind of choices you make. So yeah, I think that was extremely helpful. Thank you.
All right, so we'll jump into some of the Fast 5 questions coming through on Twitter. The first question we have is from Armco. He asks, prediction, opinions about aggregator apps like Flipboard and where they are headed. Immersive apps within the digital magazines.
Oh, that's an interesting question. I love Flipboard. I love things like BuzzFeed as well. I love the way that you can sort of build your own profile and how it will go out and find content that it thinks will entertain or inform you. Where do I see that going? I mean, that's a good question, and I don't think I've thought about it before. But if I put on the top of my head the hat of, say, a content owner, how important would BuzzFeed be to me? I think I'd see it more as a marketing channel than as something that's going to drive direct benefit. Maybe really drive direct or indirect revenue for my business. I'd maybe see that as an important marketing channel. So where it's going to go, I really don't know. But as an app, I love it, I have to say, both online and on my tablet. And I'm constantly browsing through things that it presents to me and finding that they're very good.
Agreed. I like the Flipboard as well. Matter of fact, it's one of my favorite apps. And the thing I like about it is it finally turns Twitter into something I can consume that doesn't make my eyes go cross. Like, it expands out the links. I can see what I'm looking at. It's not a 2-point font. And it does. It makes the consumption easier, and we don't want to say this because of all of our fantastic sponsors on TechWhirl, but the other aspect of it that makes at least Flipboard quite helpful is that it eliminates a lot of the flashing and the stuff, and hey, look at my ad, and hey, do you want to sign up for my newsletter, and all this irritating stuff that seems to be on every website, or almost every website. It makes the content a lot more consumable. At least to me, it does.
Yeah, and speaking of the apps like Flipboard and BuzzFeed and BBC, this probably changes on a regular basis, but Alyssa from Oz asked what your top 5 favorite apps are other than the BBC app. So tell us, in addition to Flipboard and BuzzFeed, are there other current favorite apps, and what makes them a favorite for you?
I'd probably have to do that by virtue of number of minutes or number of times access. So I'm looking at it. It's certainly not Angry Birds, because I've never been able to get through the first level of Angry Birds. Although my goddaughter did it in about 6 minutes, and I sat there, how the heck did you do that? I travel a lot, so I'm a great fan of travel apps. I do like what TripIt has done. I don't think it's the best, most wonderful thing in the world, but I love the ability to gather all of my travel information into one place. And when I'm on the move, I can pull up itineraries, I can pull up bookings, I can change things, and I can do all of that. I like that very much. I spend a lot of time on Facebook, and I like the recent Facebook app. It's a lot better than it used to be, and has to have mixed feelings about Facebook, like a lot of people. Flipboard we have mentioned. We're interested because we work with some great publishing ventures, and one of those is a company called Inkling. And Inkling has in the business of producing some really great multimedia, multifunction textbooks. And if anyone is not familiar with that, I suggest they take a look at the Inkling app. It's just fantastic. If you're interested in cookery or travel, it's got some great features within it. I spend, sadly, a lot of time on WebEx on my iPad. And I probably shouldn't say that, but we do in our company, because we're so distributed. We do a lot of we spend a lot of time in WebEx, and I just find it very good on the iPad. And we spend a lot of time in Salesforce, and the Salesforce app is pretty good as well. And then, sorry, just one more before I go. And there's a term in the UK for when you go online and look at really expensive properties. And if you forgive the language, it's called property porn. And a lot of real estate agents, estate agents as we call them, have brilliant apps now where you can sort of peer around people's very, $30 million houses and go, yeah, I really like that 2-acre marble bathroom. So those are pretty fun.
Sort of the new age version of lifestyles of the rich and famous.
But while you're on the tube, right? All right, so we're clearly in the beginning of mobile. The iPad, what is it? If I remember correctly, the iPad is turning 30 months, I think, is its age right now, so it's not that old. Matter of fact, our friends in Cupertino are announcing the new iPhone today, as a matter of fact. So our timing couldn't have been luckier. So what do you think? Let's go 10 years ahead. What's mobile look like then?
I think it can only become. I won't say the word controlling. I don't mean the word. I don't mean that. I certainly, witnessing this, centricity of my life on mobile devices nowadays, the ability to perform almost any function, and that can only grow. If we think back, not even 3, 4, 5 years ago, the things that we didn't do then and the things we do now, both from information consumption as well as purchasing, as well as a lifestyle, as well as a work aspect. It's only going to get more intensive based around mobile devices, and the ability to control more of your life is going to be prevalent there. One of the things that we talked about a few years ago is this idea of convergence on mobile devices, and how convergence would happen very, very quickly. And I'm not sure that it has yet. I bet many people here and listening have still got an iPad and a laptop and a mobile phone still. So that's yet to happen, and I think that's something that will happen pretty soon. The need for a laptop is going to disappear, I think, pretty soon, and we'll be living more of our lives on a tablet or a large mobile device.
How do you see the tablet? I've heard this before, and especially the tablets. I haven't seen the Gartner hype cycle recently, but my estimate is that tablets, especially for doing anything that isn't just merely looking at my notes as we ask these questions, it has to be early in the hype cycle. What's going to have to me, I've tried to do work on this iPad, and if I don't have the external keyboard, I become miserable really, really quickly. And I know what the ads show, but what's going to have to, do you think people are just going to grow used to the keyboard and not having a mouse? It doesn't seem like the laptop and the computer is going to go anywhere. in the future to me, only because at some point I need a mouse. At some point I need a keyboard. How do you think this is going to change that eliminates the laptop, or is a tablet just going to become the new laptop?
Well, I think Siri is only the start of this, isn't it? I understand your frustration about working on an on-screen keyboard, but voice activation and I'll throw out blue sky thinking, even sort of like mental stimulus in one way or another is going to be something that will control the device down the line. Certainly voice activation will become much more advanced, and that will negate the need for a keyboard. It will become much easier to control your tablet by verbal command. But I can imagine down the line that we'll have something implanted in our head that, like a little chip in our head that connects to our tablet or our mobile, and we'll just think something and it will happen down the line. I'll just think, I forgot to send Al that email, and it's done. And that must be somewhere down the line. I know not what Apple is thinking about, but I bet there are people in Cupertino who are thinking along those lines. But I suppose going back to the Gartner Hive cycle, I suppose really what you're saying, Al, is that we're about to head into the trough of despondency on these things, where expectation is not going to meet delivery. So it'll be interesting to see what actually happens, whether Gartner's forecasts will come true, whether there'll be hundreds of millions of these things sold, or whether they'll just end up sitting on people's shelves in a couple of years until the next whole generation comes out.
Those are.
Uh-oh. I think we may have lost him. But I do have a question while we're waiting for him to get unfrozen there. Early in our discussion, you talked quite a bit about the analytics, and this was one of the things that I was seeing. I guess about halfway through last year, where I started seeing more and more information coming out about the business intelligence, specifically about text analytics and doing analytics on this kind of unstructured, massive amounts of content that are out there in Twitter feeds and Facebook posts and things like that. Are there specific tools that you're seeing that are working better right now to help take that, particularly with the unstructured content, and this is sentiment analysis as well as content?
I think there's two sides to analytics. The first is understanding user behavior, so you can promote or develop differently. So that's one side of it. But then, yes, it's a fascinating subject to think about data information mining to find relevant content, relevant information for people at a point in time. And I have an open mind on the tools that are available to do that at the moment. We're testing some at the moment. We're testing some entity extraction, some RDF linking tools, some ways of discovering information sets in unstructured content that people can't very quickly visually identify, and linking those across wider content sets. Personally, I don't think there's anything out there at the moment that is super good at doing that. I think it's, for one client that we're working with, we're actually piecing together a combination of tools to achieve an overall better outcome from extraction of information and linking of information. What's great is that the standards are there. So ontologies, RDF linking, those W3C standards are there that allow us to build those things out. But I think it's still early days in that area. Now, how powerful is that? It's incredibly powerful. If I think about one client situation, we're looking at amassing an enormous volume of content. People's ability to consume or understand content is only as wide as the funnel that they have available to them. If you can expand that funnel exponentially by automating the process of extracting information from content, it becomes incredibly powerful for businesses. If you're in the world of research, or if you're in the world of analysis or risk or other areas, that becomes great. But to your point, Connie, we're in the process of evaluating some very recent technologies at the moment, and I don't see any standouts there at the moment. moment. I think that there are some good candidates, but no great standouts. But I'm very interested in that particular area. We'll catch up on that in Portland.
Okay. Okay.
So bringing up Portland and the LavaCon conference, and I'm going to ask this quick, just in case my system blows up again. You are speaking at LavaCon. Can you talk to us a little bit about what you're speaking on?
So we're at LavaCon. I will be there. And one of my colleagues, Mark Rubner, who is our VP of Marketing, will be there. And we actually have two sessions, I think, like you. The first one is going to be myself, and we're going to be talking more about mobile and tablet strategies. And the second one, we're going to be talking really about print to digital, about how you make the migration from a print and a legacy content development world to a digital content development world. So as I say, with those two sessions, I can't remember the day they're on. I think they're on Sunday, or perhaps Monday. I should know that. But I'll find out. We'll be attending the conference, and we have a booth there as well, so if anybody wants to stop by and chat, we're very happy to do that at any time during the event, during the evenings and so forth, and very much looking forward to it.
Great. Well, so are we. Got one more. We call these our bonus questions, and this is your chance, a shameless plug, which we also like because, after all, you've given us your time and your very valuable thoughts about all of these things. How would you describe how working with Innodata can benefit a company who wants to develop a strategy for delivery of content on mobile devices?
Okay, I think three ways. I think the first is by virtue of our experience. We've worked with a lot of companies in different industries at different stages of a journey, whether it's starting to conceive of strategies and thinking about products, or whether it's implementing the workflows, the business processes, or the technologies to realize a strategy. And so it gives us a broad set of experience. And introducing the defined approach a moment ago was kind of an encapsulation of some of that experience. Secondly, by virtue of working with a broad swathe of companies, we learn about leading practices in different industries. What is happening in the world of content, where content is the revenue generating aspect of the business, tends to flow through into other areas, where people are really maximizing the revenue from content. They have the greatest interest in developing experiences and developing channels to sell more of it. And so we, by virtue of working that, we can learn of leading practices that can be adapted and reused elsewhere. And I think thirdly, one of the things I'd say is that we're technology independent. We're not a technology company. We don't sell applications. What we do is we focus on client needs, and then we recommend appropriate technologies to fulfill those needs. So we take a very technology agnostic approach to what we do. Not to say we don't understand technologies. We work with a vast swathe of content technologies, and we understand many of them. I can't claim all of them, because by common account there's something like 400 content management systems on the market at the moment. And we know a chunk of them, but we certainly don't know 400 of them. But we really focus on client needs first, and then recommend what we think is the best tool. And best is often a combination of fit, cost, strategy, all sorts of other things to do that. I think in those ways. So thank you. It's not necessarily a shameless plug, because I'm kind of shy and retiring Englishman.
Oh, so. Yes, definitely. Just like we are.
Well, thank you so much, Stephen, for spending time with us. We appreciate it, and your thoughts on this industry are great. We're looking forward to seeing you at LavaCon.
Thank you very much.
On LavaCon, it is not too late to sign up. It's in early October. We are doing a lot of these interviews this month. So head over to lavacon.org. Give a try to TechWhirl in the discount code. We're not sure if that's still active or not, but give it a try, and we'd love to see you there. It is a fantastic conference, and we look forward to attending it. We will be joining here.
I appreciate it. It was fun and very, very interesting.
It was. And for myself, Al Martin, TechWhirl, the entire gang, the folks at Innodata, the LavaCon people, thank you so much for watching, and next week we will be doing our final Fast 5 in preparation for LavaCon. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.